Thanks everyone for attending this technical session on getting started with ArcGIS Experience Builder Developer Edition. My name is Ying, a senior product engineer working on the Experience Builder team, and the co-presenter with me today is Paige, a senior developer from professional service of Esri. Yeah, we're happy to deliver this session to you guys, but just a reminder that this session is a beginner level for introducing the fundamental of the developer edition of Experience Builder. If you have already played with it and want to learn more about how to customizing your app or widgets, we recommend you move to some higher level session. Yeah, great.
We just see a few familiar faces in the crowd who are going to really grill us at the end, so.
Okay, let's get started. Well, also during or after this session, we really appreciate any of your feedback, and that will help us improve the session or our product as well. Thank you. So in this session, we will cover the following topics. First, I will introduce some key features of the Experience Builder Developer Edition and its technology stack. And we will have a demo showing how to set up the Developer Edition and a common workflow for no-code and the low-code collaboration. And second, the Paige will talk more about the Developer Edition, including how to deploy the custom widgets and the app deployment as well, and other strategies. Also, they will come with a demo. So let's move into the first part. First question, what is Experience Builder? It is a web app builder. It's a web app builder that lets you create the interactive GIS application using maps, data, and the configurable widgets, no code or low code. It's built on top of the latest web technology and the JavaScript API, now version 5. We upgraded to version 5 of JavaScript API. So therefore, the apps can look modern and perform better. And with the Developer Edition, you still have access to various ready-to-use widgets, and they are open source, which provides you the good code examples. You can learn from them and easily modify them to meet your needs. And Experience Builder uses GMO library. You can think of it as a collection of Legos used in the widgets. With GMO, you can quickly assemble your own castles with the components. And when designing your app, you can also preview and play UI components with various styles in the Storybook. Storybook is the UI deployment environment and the playground of the UI components. In ArcGIS Experience Builder, we use Storybook as a standalone and isolated environment to document and preview the UI components in GMO library and the theme variables that are available for customizations. And with the Developer Edition, the custom widget and the themes are portable. That means you can code once and use anywhere. Experience Builder is an extensible framework which contains several technologies. Let's talk about this. At the bottom level, we have TypeScript as our official language, which is used throughout the builder. And the React is the JavaScript library we use for building the user interface. And the Redux is a predictable state container for JavaScript applications, and we use it to help with managing app state. In addition, we use Webpack for module bundle. Webpack is a powerful static module bundle for modern JavaScript applications. Also, Experience Builder lazy load ArcGIS JavaScript API. That means we load the API only when a widget that depends on it required to load. Above that, we have our GMO libraries. As I have already mentioned, it is JavaScript library we use throughout the Experience Builder, and it is extensible framework and it has 4 packages. First is the ArcGIS Core, the framework core. It provides the interface and types to work with widget properties, message actions, data source, and etc. It also defines several classes that will be used throughout your experience. And GMU ArcGIS, it is designed to contain the components depends on the ArcGIS JavaScript API. And the GMU UI provides the UI framework for your experience. And the GMU for Builder includes some common functions used by the builder that provides classes for developing the widget's setting page. As you learn, ArcGIS Experience Builder is flexible, configurable, and extensible. Non-coders and coders can cooperate together to create your focused web apps. You can build the application with ready-to-use widgets without writing any code. And then with the developer edition, you can input the existing application from your online or enterprise organization or from zip files, and then to make the application more powerful with some low-code development, such as to include custom widgets, themes, and actions. And after completing your application, you can download and we minify the custom code on the fly to generate a smaller package. And Experience Builder will generate new ID for each downloaded app. That's actually to prevent the browser caching, so the end users can see the latest update you made. Finally, you can deploy the application to a web server to deliver to your end user. Something about the upgrade and the migration. So to upgrade the apps created in previous version of Experience Builder Developer Edition, you can just simply copy it from a previous version to the new version at the specific directory. There are some tips though. If your application has custom widgets, we first recommend you to read the breaking change of each release to make sure nothing broke your app or you need to make some appropriate modification based on the breaking change. Once you copied your widget to the new version, TypeScript will work to flag if something doesn't work, like missing some module or property, and then you will fix accordingly. Also, do not change the version of the copied app or widgets because the configurations are backward compatible. Also, if necessary, you might need to rename the app ID within the info.json file and the name of your app directory. If you have worked with Web App Builder and would like to transfer to Experience Builder, we encourage you to migrate your app and custom widgets from Web App Builder to Experience Builder as soon as possible if you have not yet done. There's so much difference between the Web App Builder and the Experience Builder technically. So that makes it impossible to automatically transfer the widgets from Web App Builder to Experience Builder. So even though it's a manual progress for the migration, here are some tips and the recommended practice to consider if you are rebuilding your widgets or themes in Experience Builder. First, you are recommended to learn those techniques, as I already mentioned, and new language and the new supported modules. Then, with both Web App Builder and Experience Builder, we have the manifest JSON, if you're familiar with that. But in the format is actually slightly different in Experience Builder than in Web App Builder. So you need to update as appropriate. And also, the widget lifecycle works differently. Then, widget HTML templates used in the Web App Builder now converted to the JSX. JSX is a syntax extension to JavaScript. it is recommended to use with React to describe what the UI should look like. Also, any Dojo-specific module should be replaced, but because they are not going to work in Experience Builder. And then accessing map or scene object pattern is different, as now in Experience Builder, you can have multiple map or scenes in one single app. And there are some custom setting panel UI difference in the pattern, developing pattern. So overall, we would recommend you have more information about custom widget developing in Experience Builder from our developer documentation if you decide to migrate the custom widget from Web App Builder. If you already worked with Experience Builder custom widgets, something you need to know, like with the retirement of JavaScript Map SDK widgets in the first quarter of 2027, ArcGIS Experience Builder out of widgets, including base map, gallery, swap, map layers, editor, will be refactored to using those web components. But this is just purely the code refactoring. It won't affect your experience in using the functioning of the product. And the extensibility with the developer edition remain the same. So you are not affected at this page with the out-of-box widgets. But if you have your custom widgets that uses the JavaScript widgets, then we do encourage you to rebuild them and migrate them to use the JavaScript web components. Otherwise, your widgets might stop working when you either update your ArcGIS Experience Builder Developer Edition that released after the first quarter of 2027, or you want to add the custom widget to Enterprise that is released later than the first half of 2027. We do provide some SDK documentations to show how to work with the JavaScript web components, and you might check out. Also, there is a blog showing, you may want to see as well, showing why and how to migrate to the JavaScript web components. Now let's move into the first demo. Rather than dive into the coding, I will just focus on the collaboration that Developer Edition provides for no-coder and the coders. So no matter you are developers or non-developers, you can make immersive web apps using Experience Builder. You can deliver great solutions even if you are not developers. You can use various ready-to-use widgets without writing any code. And you can make design decisions with libraries of templates we provide. For example, I have already made application using some of the templates, and many of you have already seen it on the plenary. So just to be simple, this is a community safety portal, a single app that provides both public crime activity information and while supporting the internal workflows for law enforcement. It has multiple pages, and now with the new login widget and the page visibility section setting there, you can now control who can view specific pages. So in this case, the home page is public facing, everyone can see it, and while the other two pages are internal access only. Only the organizational logging officers can see these pages. This is the basic context of this application. It looks nice, great. It is purely built by the built-in functions of Experience Builder, so you don't have to write any code for such application. But you always can extend it by adding new pages with, again, library of templates, and also using a pool of these ready-to-use widgets. So for example, I can add a near me widget to this public view so the residents can check out what's going on around them. Let's configure this widget. So we already set up connected with the map directly. We want to add some analysis to this widget, which is proximity. So that will search the crime cases and display them with, let's say, the crime category within a certain distance. Define it some cases within your defined distance and group them with the crime category. So let's see how it works. So in the builder, if you want to check out how your app acts, you can just turn on the live view and it quickly lets you to interact with your app. Wait. I think I didn't click OK when I close. So let's do it again. Okay, so I can drop a pinpoint on the location. It was searching on the 1 kilometer buffer, and it summarized the crime cases around me with the different categories and types. I can check out the details of each case. So it's very straightforward showcase that how easy it is to add or use the ready-to-use widgets in the Experience Builder to build your app. So once your app design is done in the builder, you can just save and publish it. And then a nice application with absolutely no code is ready to be delivered to your end user. While if you are a developer, you can always make your application more powerful with some low-code development. With Experience Builder Developer Edition, you can customize the widget, themes, and action to further extend your application to solve the specific issues in your field. Now we can just download these packages from the developer site and unzip it, which I've already done here. I have already downloaded and unzip it in my local. So now I will demonstrate how to set up the developer edition. We have already downloaded and zipped. So next step is to make sure you have installed the appropriate version of Node.js. We always recommend you to check out the recommended Node.js every time when you work with each release of Experience Builder. To set up, we need to use the command line or terminal. Here, first thing to check the Node version, I will type Node-V, Node-V. I'm using the version 2022, so it should be compatible with the 19 version. So it's fine. Now I'm going to set up. As you notice that the package of Experience Builder have two main folders, client and the server. The client contains the code for the Experience Builder front end, like the Builder UI, widgets, runtime app that run in your browser. And the server contains a Node.js service that supports the builder to run locally. So first thing, I will go to the server folder, just type cd and copy the path. And now under the server directory, I will run npm CI to install the dependent packages. Well, if you're just going to use the developer edition to connect and use the data from your organization, then setting up the folder only is enough. But if you are going to develop your custom widget and the custom themes, then you have to set up the client folder to launch Webpack to help with bundling and loading your custom code into the Experience Builder. So the same thing, we will open another terminal and go to the client folder. Under the client folder, same thing, run npm CI to install the dependencies. So while it's it's installing, let's first do the next step. We will create a client ID to use for the app registration later. A client ID is an identifier associated with application that assists with OAuth 2 authentication when you want to work with your content and the data and service from your organization. To do so, you can log into ArcGIS Online or portal organization. But in this demo, I will just demo how to create the client ID in ArcGIS Online. It's the same thing. So after you log into your organization, you will go to the content, then add a new item. Here, choose the type, developer credentials. Well, there are several different types of credentials here. You can check out the documentation for when to use Word, and it actually explains very clearly for the usage and the comparisons. But in our case, to let the experience builder use your organization's data to run locally, we will just use the first type, the user authentication. So you can just log in with your account to read the data from your org or import app from your org. So we'll just click next. Because the experience builder will by default running on the port 3001 localhost. So we will just copy and paste the URL there for our redirect destination and the app URL. Then simply give it a title to recognize, like EXB dev app. I have another one, so give it a number. Okay. So now the item is created. So it will provide you the client ID. With that, actually, we can get the authentication assist from the ArcGIS client API when to run with the developer edition. So we will use this client ID later for the registration step. Now let's go back to the local. So both folders installation are complete. So now let's just start the builder. Very simple, just tap npm start under both folder to start the both client and server. Actually, with that, now we can visit the Experience Builder Developer Edition at the localhost 3001. Now, this step is just to connect the Developer Edition with your organization. Then we will copy the organization URL to the first box, and then copy over the client ID we just create. And click sign in and authorize your account. Now that's everything we set up. The Experience Builder is running now on local. Then you can create new application as we always do. It also has the built-in functions, but you can also import existing applications from your ArcGIS Online or Enterprise organization, or from a zip file shared by other colleagues. Then I will just import the community safety portal we just finished on my online organization. Then we'll just select and click done. So it just imported to my local. Then I will go ahead to edit it. In this case, I will just extend this application, adding a custom widget. I have already added a custom widget under the folder client, your extension, widget, custom widget called the slider filter. This is a custom widget that I downloaded from Esri Community. It is created by Lucas Kramer, and I just simply download it and paste it into this directory. So now I can just see it directly in the widget pool under the custom category. That's easy. So Paige later will explain more about how to set up the custom widget. But for this part now, I will simply just use it and configure it. So let's move into the monitor page. For example, I want to add that custom widget to the monitor page. Sorry, I need to turn on the layout so it can split much more easily. So this widget is very straightforward. Like it can filter the data based on the value range of the selected field. Let's configure it. Simply choose the data source and a field you want to filter on. Say we just use the crime case data, then I want to filter based on how many people are affected in each case. And it will automatically read the field's minimum value and the maximum value, but you can also manually adjust. Then I will adjust some UI stuff to make it better fit into our existing app. And now check how it works. You can just simply drag the slider and it filter your data on the fly. And in this case, it's just showing the crime cases with more than 4 people affected. And you can drag both ends of the value range. So that's a very useful but easy custom widget. This is available on Esri Community. So what we see here is like adding custom widget to your existing no-code application is very easy and straightforward. Even if you are not developer, you can still benefit from this strategy by using up the widgets shared by other talented developers. And there are many ready-to-use custom widgets shared in the Esri community by many of the talented developers. We really appreciate it for their contribution. Then you may check out if that works for you. So as you see, combining your existing no-code application with some low-code development is very straightforward. After you complete your application design, then you can save and publish and then download it to your local, then deploy it to your web server to deliver to your end users. For that part, I will hand over to Paige for more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Wei. All right. So like Wei was just alluding to, there we go. Yeah. There are multiple sources of custom widgets. You can, of course, build your own from scratch. You can visit this GitHub repo, which contains a bunch of Experience Builder, both sample widgets and themes. You can visit the Esri Community, which Wei was just showing us, or you can modify out-of-the-box widgets. And hopefully this goes without saying, but you should always review all custom code before use, especially when it wasn't written by you, so you fully understand what it's doing. Is it working the way you intend it to? And like we just saw, within the builder interface, you can drag and drop your custom widgets in just as you would with out-of-the-box widgets. They'll appear at the very bottom of that insert widget pane. And we're going to dive right in now to developing a custom widget. Okay. Sorry.
I'm going to switch the video.
Yeah. Okay, great. So first, I followed all the instructions that Wei laid out for downloading and installing Experience Builder Dev Edition. Now I'm going to make sure I get my client and server running by typing npm start in each of those respective directories. And I'll verify that that is working properly by heading over to my browser and making sure if I go to localhost 3001 that I see the builder interface. So let me give this a refresh. Excellent. Okay. So this is exactly where I expect to be. So let me come back to VS Code. And I was browsing that Experience Builder SDK resources GitHub repo and found a particularly interesting widget that I would like to use. So if I expand my client folder and then come down to my your extensions and then drill down once more into widgets, this is where all of my custom widgets are going to live. And the widget in particular that we're going to look at right now is this Use Web Components 19 widget, which again came from the Experience Builder SDK Resources GitHub repo. And like I just said, we're going to look at the code to first understand what is it currently doing. So if I open up the source directory within the widget directory, I'm going to come into settings first and look at the settings.tsx file. So this is going to be the logic and UI that we see within that settings pane for the widget. And this one looks fairly simple. I see we have one method here called onSelect. And down below within the return, I can see that I have a map widget selector. And when a map widget is selected, that onSelect method is called. And I have the use map widget ID that property as well. So pretty straightforward here. Now let's go over to the runtime folder and look at the widget.tsx to see what's going on. One thing that I noticed right away is this comment on line 4, please make sure to import the packages to use web components. So as we've been hearing throughout the morning, we are really focusing on utilizing web components. And so this sample that I chose from that GitHub repo is displaying how to use web components as opposed to the JavaScript SDK widgets. So in order to do this, I need to import, in this case, calcite components, because we're going to use a calcite component, and I'm importing ArcGIS map components. And now if I look at the further down, I see I have one state variable defined, active view, and I have one method defined on active view change. And we keep scrolling. I see that if there is no use map widget IDs property, all that's going to be displayed in the UI of the widget is a text message saying, please select a map widget in the widget settings. Otherwise, I see the text.
It's like the connection is not good.
Don't move.
Don't move.
No one move. Okay. So I'm going to see the text. This widget demos how to use components without the React wrapper. I have one calcite button, which doesn't appear to do anything. It just has the text, this is a calcite button. And then finally, I see a GMU map view component, and here is my ArcGIS legend web component. So now let's go over to the builder interface and actually add this widget into an app and see how it looks. Okay, so currently I had a simple app set up with just a web map. Now I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of my insert widget pane, and I see my use web components 19 widget. Make that fit a little better. And while I have the focus on that custom widget, I see in the settings pane that it's prompting me to select a map widget. And because there's only one map widget in my experience, it auto-selected that one for me. And just as I suspected, I see the text, this widget demos how to use components without the React wrapper. I see that calcite button, and I see a legend. So this is a great starting point. But let's say I want to take it a little bit further. So now let's go to VS Code. And I've actually already done a little bit more work, so I'm going to close these. I did not do anything to change the existing settings pane, but I did build a little bit more into the widget's logic and UI. So I've added a second state variable, show legend. And then I've added a use effect here, which, assuming there is an active view, I'm going to disable any pop-ups on the map and instead take whatever attributes or whatever would have been displayed in that pop-up and put it into a ArcGIS features web component. And I've added that ArcGIS features web component to my widget UI. And I've also modified that calcite button slightly so that it's functional, and on click, it's going to toggle whether or not we see the legend. And so that's relying on that show legend state variable, and then assuming, or depending on the current state, if the legend's currently showing, the button text will display hide legend. If the legend is not showing, it will show legend. So let's go back to the builder, and I'm going to remove that original version of the widget, come back to insert, and I will bring in my modified web components widget. So make it full height. And now let's do the live view. So I see, see nothing. I see that my button text has changed. So now I see the text hide legend. And if I click it, it does in fact show and hide the legend, just like we would expect. And now if I click somewhere on the map, what would have been the contents of the pop-up is now being displayed in my custom widget. And I can tell that there's something being cut off here, so I'm going to hide my legend. Now I see the full extent of that pop-up content. Switch back to the slides. We're on our way developing a custom widget. Now the next thing I want to show you guys, which is always of particular interest, is modifying an out-of-the-box widget. So you may have come across circumstances where an out-of-the-box widget is 95% of the way there for you or your users, but it's just, there's that little something that's just not quite hitting the mark. Well, I'm going to show you where to go look within Dev Edition to get that source code. You can bring it in to your extensions folder and then essentially treat it as any other custom widget and go to town. So let's go back to VS Code. And if I look within the client folder, I'll see this dist folder. Okay. 1 second, sorry. Okay, so I'm back in VS Code. I'm looking at the client folder. Within there, I'm looking at dist. And then finally, I'm looking at widgets. And here is where all of the widgets, all the out-of-the-box widgets live. They're broken down into different, I guess, categories: ArcGIS, BA, Infographic, Common, GeoBIM, etc. So let's see what I could do to modify my existing experience and what might make sense to consider modifying. So say I want to add the out-of-the-box coordinates widget, just for a little additional information for my users. Whenever they hover over any point on the map, it'll show them the lat long. The out-of-the-box widget also enables them to click on this enable click tool, which will then give the user the crosshair to drop a point on the map, and then they can copy that lat long out. In my case, maybe my users don't have absolutely any functional reason to have these extra buttons. I just want to see the lat long. I don't need to be able to copy those coordinates out. So let's go grab that coordinates widget, and then we're going to get rid of those buttons, because as it stands today, that's not something that I can configure through the Experience Builder GUI. Okay, so I know that under widgets, the coordinates widget is within the ArcGIS folder, and there I see coordinates, so I will copy that, which I've actually already done. And I've pasted it into the Your Extensions Widgets folder. And here's something really important that I want to note. I've changed the name of the folder itself. You can see here I've changed it to Modified Coordinates. And somewhere I also need to change it is within the manifest.json file. So I've changed that name property to modified-coordinates. And we need this name property and the folder name to match. And we also need them to be unique within all of Experience Builder. So if I just copied it and didn't bother modifying this, we would have issues, because that out-of-the-box coordinates widget is called coordinates. So that's why I need to make sure I do that first. Okay, so I've done that. Now I'm going to come into the source folder, and then into runtime, and finally widget.tsx. And within here, I'm looking for, well, I know I'm looking for 2 buttons. So let me do a search. So first, I see this button has the on-click event handler on locate click. Because I've done some prior research, I know this is the button that will enable that crosshair tool. So I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. And if I scroll down a little further, I see there's also a copy button, which I know is the one that will actually on click perform copying that lat long. So I'm commenting that as well. One thing, we didn't go into the settings of this coordinates widget, but there are 2 different styles. So this code needs to be commented out in 2 separate places to cover both styles. So again, I scroll down a little further. I have another button whose on-click event handler calls on locate click. So I'll comment that and comment out the second copy button. So now when I come back to my builder and I go to turn off live view, add a widget, I'll scroll down to the bottom where my custom widgets are. I'm going to remove the existing out-of-the-box coordinates widget and use my modified coordinates. And I see now, if I turn on the live view, that the button on the left-hand side to enable that crosshair point tool and the button to the right of the lat long to copy that lat long are gone. So that's how I can modify existing or out-of-the-box widgets and make them into my own custom widget. Now let's talk about widget and app deployment. And there are 2 patterns for deployment. This is not something I think anyone should live or die by. This is more just to help guide you in your decision making when you're trying to figure out, does it make sense for me to deploy a custom widget, or does it make sense for me to deploy an app as a whole? So the first thing we need to consider, and this one is a very black and white consideration, is do I have access to ArcGIS Enterprise 11.x or greater? If the answer is no, say you're still on 10.9.1, custom Experience Builder widgets are not supported, so you would have to deploy an entire app that you can build in in Experience Builder Dev Edition, download, and then deploy. Assuming you do have access to either Enterprise 11.x or 12.x, then we can move forward and continue to think about deploying the widget on its own. The next consideration we have is, will I reuse the widget in multiple apps? If no, if it's so highly customized to this one app you're building, maybe it's not worth the effort of hosting that widget or deploying that widget on its own, and you can deploy the app as a whole. But if you see it being reused in multiple different applications, then yes, let's go to the final consideration. Does my stakeholder or customer know what to do with a custom widget? So if I just give someone some source code and say, there you go, and they're going to be so confused and have no idea, maybe it's not the best idea to deploy the widget. But if they know what to do with that and they know how to place it on a web server and go register that item in Portal, then yeah, could be a great idea to deploy the widget, use it across multiple Experience Builder apps. So now I'll talk about specifically deploying custom widgets and deploying custom apps. So when our target is ArcGIS Enterprise, there are a few steps we need to follow. We need to host the custom widget on a web server, like I was just alluding to, register the custom widget in Portal, make sure the sharing is set appropriately, and then finally, from Portal's version of Experience Builder, we can add that custom widget to however many apps we would like. When we're deploying a custom app, and our target is a web server, the steps are quite a bit different. So we would build our entire Experience Builder app in Dev Edition, which included any out-of-the-box widgets we would want, any custom widgets we want. Then we would download the app as a zip file, copy that over to our web server, unzip the files, and then host the files on the web server. And that would expose to us a URL, which then you could create an item in Portal, for example, that points to that URL. And I'm going to just show a very quick demo of this. So in my case, I have quit you. Okay. Okay. So my entire enterprise stack in this example is, or my portal is hosted on a Windows server. So I'm going to be using IIS. So I've already done the work of downloading my configured experience. I've copied that zip file over to my web server. And now I've come into IIS, and under the default website, I chose Add Application, and I just click Explore. I pointed it to the directory where I had unzipped that zip file. And so if I open that up, I can see it contains a CDN folder, an index.html folder, service worker, and a web.config file. And so that, now I've hosted my application. And if I come over to my portal, I've already added it as an item. And you can see now that I have my entire application has been hosted. I'm really just pointing to that URL from Portal. And the pop-ups are working. Let me give it a refresh. Okay, there we go. A little slow. And now, just like as we saw it working in the Experience Builder interface, it is now working as a fully deployed and accessible, or I guess not. It is accessible via a URL. It's not just on my local host. Okay. Quick note on managing multiple environments. So say you need to move things around, move your experiences around. ArcGIS Online Assist is a great tool for doing that. ArcGIS Assistant is hopefully the next generation of that, currently in beta still. There are also some scripting options available, both cloning items or using the web experience class. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more. So we can automate the publishing of our Experience Builder apps that we build in Dev Edition using the ArcGIS API for Python. And it will upload an app from your local to either ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. And I'll give a demo of that. So with a very simple Python script, hardly 10 lines. I'm importing GIS from ArcGIS GIS, which is going to be used for authenticating with my portal. I'm importing web experience from ArcGIS.apps.experience builder. And then I'm going to authenticate with portal, and I'm giving it my portal URL, my username. It's going to prompt me for my password. I am creating an instance of the web experience class by giving it my GIS and the path to the downloaded Experience Builder app. Or, excuse me, sorry, this is not the downloaded, I misspoke, not the downloaded app. This is so this will be created once I start building an app through the builder. You do not have to be at the point of downloading it for this path to exist. So within the Experience Builder install, in my server folder, there will be a public apps, and then each app will receive an index. Because this was the first app I created in 1.19, it has a 0 index, and I'm pointing to my config.json file. So I have that instance of the web experience, and then I'm going to call upload on that and pass in my GIS and say publish equals true. So let me go ahead and run this. The right directory. Okay. And now when I go back to my portal, I expect to see that new item. And I can see created just now, experience via Python, and then it's given some ID. One thing that I will note is that because this experience contained custom widgets that I haven't done any extra work on, we will see these messages that the widgets are failing to load. Oh, it's not even showing them. Let's see. Okay, this is from a version I had published a day or two ago, but you see there in the right-hand pane where I expected my custom widget to be, I just get a fail to load. It doesn't know what to do about that because I haven't hosted those widgets anywhere. So there are some limitations to using the scripting method, so beware of that, but it is out there. Okay. And with that, getting near the end, here are, I know it's just a bunch of URLs, but resources to some things we've already mentioned, getting started on developing a custom widget, ArcGIS Online Assistant, the migration to web components. These are all great resources that you should check out. And one thing I do want to make a quick plug for, hopefully this isn't the only time you hear about it this week, there is an exciting new feature coming to the Esri developer site called the Ask AI feature. So you could visit any and all of those URLs that I just had up on the screen, or once this feature is released, you can come here and ask your very detailed questions about developing custom widgets or deploying custom widgets. Yeah, so that will be coming soon. And with that, we will open it up for questions. Right in front. It is going, so the next version of Experience Builder Dev Edition will be released late March. So
25th.
March 25th to be exact.
Yeah. Hey.
If you take an app to deploy your app, but then you save that or you generate a template on that app, is your widget going to write on that template so other users could deploy that app again and still have that custom widget?
Yes, you can have that.
Sure.
You have a bunch of older Experience Builder Dev Edition apps. What's the best way to maintain that life cycle and to keep updates on with the most current version of Experience Builder?
The best way to, so
Best practice.
best practice for updating your existing custom widgets. Custom widgets and or apps, both. Ideally, with every release of the JavaScript SDK, you would be updating. I know sometimes that isn't realistic in practice.
Yeah, sometimes it's actually automatically if it depends on the JavaScript API because we're pointing to the CDN of the new version of JavaScript. But if for the Experience Builder libraries, you still need to manually upgrade to the new version. Just copy over your app to the new version folder and then reinstall the dependencies and then run again. Yeah. There's currently no automation stuff for upgrading, but it's a good feedback. Like for the user's convenience, we probably have to think of that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
If no more question, but you are always welcome to come by our booth, and we're ready there for any help. Thank you.
Thank you all.